well-known peer of yours that took a stake in another peer and tried to rattle the cages a little bit and ultimately stepped aside to that sort of activism. But you also have the shareholder activism. I'm just curious your thoughts overall on what's happening in the industry.
I don't have any personal exposure to it. I think in the multifamily space, allowing for the example you just mentioned, there are a lot of social inhibitions to hostile activity and a lot of legal protections, if you will, or structures that preclude hostile activity. And so I would see too much of it being talked about, and it won't happen until management's interested.
I would certainly, I mean, active and smart are two different things, and I think that the job of management and a board is to think about what's really best for the company. Now, they represent shareholders, but it doesn't mean that any particular shareholder's interests are in the best interest of all the stakeholders of the company. And often, activists get involved when a company's value is depressed, and if it's a relatively short-term phenomenon and people load up at a low cost, you've got to be very careful to not abandon your job. There's a reason that companies have boards, and that's to step back and use good judgment, and often with a lot better knowledge about the risks embedded in the company than an activist shareholder. Now, they're an owner, so you have to respect that, but I think there's a limit to that.
I think one of the things that we're seeing, and we don't see it a lot in our sector, but we see it a lot in our industry. I mean, you see shareholder activism at the retailer level. That is pretty common. We heard a little bit about it at lunch, and it's typically not at all positive. Very rarely has been positive. We saw it at Borders, we've seen it at Target, we saw it at Penny, we've seen it across the board, and these are complicated. These are very complicated businesses. I mean, it's very easy for an outsider to look in and say, you know, I have an idea, we can do it better, let's get active. It's very, very difficult to actually operate and execute a strategy that's going to lead to a better result than if you work from within inside the company to try to make positive changes. And that's why you see many of our retail companies either going private or thinking of going private, which is not a good thing for our business because you have much less transparency, they're much more highly levered. And while we have access to a lot of information because we're a large landlord, most people don't, so you don't know really what the credit quality of the cash flow is until something goes wrong. So shareholder activism at the retail level has really played out in a way that has been positive for our industry, and we'd like to see a lot less of it and a lot more constructive dialogue about how retailers can get better, because we have a lot of retailers that need to get better, but activism is not always the right way to get there.
Well, maybe just continuing on that thought for a second, with retailers, they own a lot of real estate. So isn't there an element of being able to participate with activists to be able to generate that value and generate that arbitrage that may be existing in the business?
You know, retailers don't own as much real estate as everyone thinks they do, and they certainly don't own as much as you're being told they do. And what they own is not worth anywhere near what you're being told it's worth. So when you take all that off the list, the real estate play is relatively insignificant because every piece of real estate is subject to operating agreements. Operating agreements are designed to devalue your options for the real estate, which devalues the actual real estate, and it puts everyone in a position where they have a vote on what happens in that real estate, no matter who owns it. So I think the real estate play is far, far, far overblown when it looks at retailers. And department stores own some of their real estate, no question about it, but a lot of the specialty stores own none. You know, if you take a look at the boxes, the ones that we predominantly do business with, the medium-sized boxes, they don't own the real estate at all. Yeah, Target will own some real estate, they'll lease some real estate, so will Walmart, so will Macy's, so will Sears, so will Penny, etc., Dillard's. But at the same time, it's not a fungible asset the way it's described in the market, and I think history has proven that. You know, there's very, very few transactions done with retailer real estate that works. And then when you go to the sale-leaseback, if you look historically, that's like the last transaction before death. And so you hate to even see a sale-leaseback transaction, because all you're doing is raising the occupancy costs, and every one of these companies is living on a subsidized occupancy cost. When you take that subsidy away, you better be right. So I think the real estate play gets a little overblown, and I think for us in the retail side, there's way too much talk about real estate and not nearly enough talk about merchandising, which is really what drives the business.